Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. Tower Talk Business Radio brings you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation, including expert consultants and small business owners who have found success, but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their first-hand experience. And now, let's get down to business with Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation.
Hello, and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of NEFQ Business Banking, along with Donyshia Boston Hill, CEO, Keeper of the Brand Marketing and Digital Agency, and we're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship.
Ray and I bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business leaders in the industry, and today we're going to interview some really cool guys in film.
Yeah, very excited.
So, Ray, oh my gosh, Long Island has become really a hotbed for entertainment.
Yep.
You know, Bethpage Studios is one example. You have Grumman. I mean, many of today's and tomorrow's leaders in entertainment began education and careers right here on Long Island. I think we have some really cool examples today, some stunning examples.
Yes, and a genre that I particularly love. So helping provide us with business empowerment today is our guest, the team behind the film Once Upon a Superhero, which is taking the festival circuit by storm. Please welcome producer Scott Weil and director John Kline of Once Upon a Superhero. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having us.
Oh, we're
Greetings, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Tell us, how did this project begin?
You know, John and I had been friends for quite a while, and he began writing several scripts, one of which was along the lines of this genre, and little by little, it kind of coerced into what it became today with the story of Solar Flare being exiled to Earth without his superpowers.
Such a cool concept. Definitely something, this is not your mom and dad's superhero movie.
Definitely not. Unless you got a really cool mom and dad.
Yes.
Well, so what can the audience expect? Give us some brief highlights without giving away the whole candy store.
Well, you could expect something like very different than all the other superhero films you ever seen before. It's definitely out there, full of a lot of ups and downs, a lot of different emotions. There's funny mixed with, happy, sad.
It's all the buckets on the emotions.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes, it's a wild ride. And what I really liked about it was that it really does focus on, well, what if there was somebody out there in that community that was saying, hey, they're a superhero, and, it really, there's a reality to it. But you're always kind of questioning, is he insane? Is he homeless? Is he, or is this real?
So how did you guys connect to bring this Once Upon a Superhero to life?
That's a long story. We got about a 20-year history between us, and upon returning to Los Angeles after I had moved away shortly, John had approached me about coming in, producing some of the scripts he had been working on and writing, and had a desire to direct. And, it was really based with the intention of us setting out to do something very different in the industry, and to ultimately push the boundaries of independent cinema.
Yep, and you surely did that, that's for sure. Now, who kind of inspired you with this project?
Well, I was inspired by, mostly, I live, literally, well, we both live, about 2 blocks away from where it happens. So I'm right in the middle of it. So when I would go to the grocery store, still to this day, sometimes I just see Superman standing in line or the Green Lantern or something. And I was just thinking to myself, hey, what if one of these guys really was a superhero and they were stuck here? And I kind of just took it from there.
Yeah, there's a whole culture, in Times Square and out in California with these people walking around wearing these costumes. And they are very sketchy.
And just to give your audience some context, when John says we live 2 blocks away, we're talking 2 blocks from the epicenter of the cosplay universe. What expanded out into Vegas and Times Square started right there on Hollywood and Highland. And what's really interesting, it expanded really globally while we made this movie over 6-7 years. Where it is today from where it was in 2012 when we started this are two different things.
Yeah. There's something very interesting that I felt about the way, seeing your social media posts, Scott in particular, with regard to how you're getting this movie out there and how you're getting it to be seen. A little different from, distribution that goes on traditionally and, now with all the streaming services and everything. I almost feel like you're hearkening back to the days of William Castle or Roger Corman, taking the picture out in the road. Do you care to comment on that approach?
Yeah, I think it's something we had always planned. We knew when the film was done that this was the approach we wanted to take in getting it out there. We didn't see this as an ordinary film. We saw this as a film that would gain ultimately a cult following that would allow it to continue to play in theaters forever and for people to really enjoy the theatrical experience of the amazing sound, the score behind it, the beautiful cinematography shot by our cinematographer, Matt Louie, and just the whole story in general, the editing and just letting it all come together for people to enjoy and have an experience together in the theater, the way Americana is supposed to be.
Now, what do you find that was surprising to you? Getting into the film business, I'm sure you had a preconceived notion for what that would be like. What was sort of surprising to you jumping into that world?
Man, the amount of movies and the competition that's out there. It's incredible how much stuff is being made. Absolutely. So many films. I think I read somewhere that 70,000 films are made every year or something. It's pretty remarkable.
And that's another thing as to what John is saying that really changed while we made this movie. The camera equipment and the editing equipment upgraded tremendously, and during that time frame, more submissions, more films being made than ever before. So yeah, that's all played into it. How do we not be one of the 50,000 independent films that nobody ever hears of? How do we buck that trend, which is one of our greatest battles?
Yeah. Now, how did you meet that? How did you differentiate yourself in that world? Because I agree, there's so much content, but then again, there's also so many channels of delivery for that content. But how did you differentiate yourself?
Well, starting off with the film, we wanted to make something that was so different and break every rule possible that you really almost be impossible to ignore. That's one of the things that we were going for.
What are some of the things that, folks might be surprised to learn about you or your film, and in particular, the world of your external world of superheroes?
Well, I grew up reading comics at a very young age, but at the same time, I grew up watching a lot of movies, all movies in general, but particularly horror films and a lot of exploitation films. And all films in general, but really exploitation and horror was my favorite growing up. And I started watching them at a very, very young age, probably 6 or 7. I was really into horror films, the 80s horror films.
That's why you and I would get along.
I'm sure.
That stuff is so great. That stuff is really great. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston Hill, and our guests today are producer Scott Weil and director John Kline of Once Upon a Superhero. You talked about some of the challenges. What's your biggest triumph to date with the film?
Do you want to take that, or you want me to, Scott?
Go ahead, take a crack at it.
I think our biggest triumph is getting it finished. Making a movie is like a miracle itself. Getting it done and getting it out there, and getting it in front of people and getting it in the theater. It's not an easy thing to do, especially like we were talking about with so much competition and so many other films. And particularly today when, the blockbuster films out there, like, the superhero films and Star Wars and, pretty much anything made by Disney is what, is all that fills the theaters nowadays. So it's not easy to get it independent, especially very independent, very low budget like ours, into the theater.
And for your listeners, and if it gives them any drop or piece of inspiration moving forward, to us, we're fighting the real most Davy versus Goliath situation you can think of. When you have a movie like The Avengers, which just completely sucks all the air out of the room, and, they control all the advertisement, they control all the commercials, they control all the algorithms. Everything is pushed and trended where only people are talking about that. And nobody else it's very hard for people to discover a Once Upon a Superhero. And it takes an incredible amount of tunnel vision and blocking out focus to pound that away and do whatever it takes for us to get it in front of people and let them know there's other kinds of cinema out there.
Yeah. Well, I agree. That's got to be huge. That challenge. I mean, I've heard of that little obscure film, The Avengers, something. Yeah.
There's a few people talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a few. What advice would you share with some of budding filmmakers that are out there? I mean, you just gave a few little nuggets, but what should keep them pushing forward?
You just got to get out there and do it. You really have to. And it's very important to stay positive. A negative mindset will really bring you down, and it's just essential to stay positive and believe in yourself.
Yeah, it's like game on every day.
Yeah, and build a great team as well. Have a great team of people around you. No weak links, and just get it done. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that fully hearted. The team is a very, very important aspect of it. And the other thing is, they got to understand it's going to be a very long process. Filmmaking, one of the things about that is it's such a different thing. I have friends that are musicians or authors, and I say, man, I'm jealous of you guys. You just need like 2 people or just your fingers and your agent. With a film, there are so many moving pieces. And, from production to pre-production, post-production, and the point we're at now with it being out in the world, every facet of that requires all different people that funnel in and out, So it's very, very challenging, a lot of moving pieces. And this didn't happen overnight. This is where we got to this point after a decade, a couple of music videos, short film, a film that we never made, but it all contributed to where we are today.
That's interesting. You brought up that films that were never made. That sometimes that actually gets you ahead. I found it very interesting. I spoke with Jeff Lieberman, the director of Just Before Dawn and Squirm and Blue Sunshine. Great cult movies. Not
absolutely.
dissimilar from a look and feel of your film. Yours is certainly a bit more polished and everything with the cinematography. But when he said that he made much more money writing screenplays for films that were never produced than he did from making the films that he's known for. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's the backward-ass industry that is Hollywood.
Now, how long did it take you to make Once Upon a Superhero?
Well, it's interesting. With pre-production and production, we started early on 2012, so it's been a long time of pre-production, getting the costumes made, working out all the details. Everything was also made out of our 2-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. So, it's not like we had a production studio or any place that we could go to and be able to do this. So everything was right out of the living room, from pre-production and designing costumes all the way up to, editing the film and working on marketing and all of that.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 years, and I mean, the process still goes on, and it's never going to end because, we're always going to be fighting for this thing to continue to find its cult audience, and as we begin to take it from the U.S. and Canada to a worldwide level and letting it kind of find its audience, see where the journey takes. But up to this point, it's been about 6-7 years.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guests today are producer Scott Weil and director John Kline for Once Upon a Superhero. I'm Donyshia Boston Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Paralyzed veterans Sean Halstead and Noah Courier.
I was Air Force from 93 to 98. I got hurt practicing combat search and rescue, fell off a fast rope, so shattered L1 vertebrae. I don't know where I'd be without paralyzed veterans. I've only seen that now.
Unite through struggle. That's what the Marine Corps and service is all about. You get tight and those bonds just get stronger and stronger the more you struggle together, and the harder the hardship. And I don't know if it gets any harder than being a quadriplegic, so we instantly bond.
Paralyzed Veterans of America is a nonprofit, and it gets no federal funding.
And we provide every service free of charge to every veteran and caregiver that we support.
Paralyzed veteran and PVA Executive Director Sherman Gillums Jr.
Every life, every success, every recovery, it's tied to the initial investment you've had in us.
To learn more, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Welcome back to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Donyshia Boston Hill, along with Ray Schwetz, and our guests today are producer Scott Weil and director John Kline for Once Upon a Superhero. And we all know that everyone here is a superhero. I'm a superhero. Ray's a superhero. It's just, we're just
but I'm not from a different
full of
planet,
powers.
like solar flare.
Are you sure?
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know
Talk
about
to my
that.
wife. Sometimes she says.
So, hey guys, casting, like, how do you guys cast for your films? I mean, I'm sure you work with a casting director, but really when an actor walks into the room, what sparks your attention to say, I need him or her, I need them in front of the camera?
Well, actually, we don't work with a casting director. Everything that was done on this film was done just us.
Cool.
We casted everything ourselves, and once again, that was all done right out of the living room.
It was a very organic process. And going back to what we discussed before, the film that John and I didn't make, that we had brought up to about the 11th hour, out of that came two actors that were key components to this film, including the star Adam Marcinowski and co-star Jason Hughes, who plays Captain Boulevard. And both of those guys had become friends with us. And it was really interesting, that when it came to the main character, we never actually had to do casting sessions. Adam was already in our brains kind of with a superhero look prior to us knowing we were going to do a superhero-type film. And he just stepped in perfectly, like the universe was meant for him. And a lot of the other guys involved in the cast are good friends with ours and lived in the building. We were managing the building that we lived in and made the movie out of during the time we were filming. And a couple of key components, including who's one of our bigger names in the film, Thomas Decker, stepped in and did this for us as a favor. And other people, Ron Bush, Jason Austin Cousins, all friends and neighbors of ours. And John had written parts specifically for them. And it just worked out very organically, the way the whole thing came together. So our casting sessions are very different than the way Hollywood's would be.
Now, the female lead for the film, she gave another great performance. I'd like you to talk a little bit about her, because she's going on to some other superhero stuff, isn't she?
Yeah, Yvette did a fantastic job, and she's really we're really proud of where she's going right now. She just finished, she wrapped up on Rambo 5. She's the co-lead of that, and that should be coming out, I believe, this summer. And she is currently shooting Stargirl, which is a DC TV show that she is in, and we're very excited for that in her. It's
no doubt that your film played a key part in that, in her getting chosen, because it's really cool to see her interact with the hero, and I felt like she was the one that I was so worried about. At certain points during the film, she was the one that I related to, and it grounded me and really involved me in the film. Where are you showing the film? Because we talked a little bit about it before, but this film is very non-traditional in terms of distribution. You're doing different things. What type of venues have you been to? Because I know there's some interesting stories there.
Oh, man, we've done a little bit of everything. For us, we have done some of the festival circuit. We book a lot of our own shows, and we like to add a little flavor to each show. We were part of Fashion Week in St. Augustine recently. We co-teamed with a animal shelter for helping Paws 22. We are setting something else up with Little Boulevard's Rescue Unit, which is after Pup in the film, John's dog Houdini. We have played on marijuana pot bus lounges. We have played in film schools. We have played in micro cinemas. We have played just about everywhere, and we really enjoy bringing the experience in all different environments.
Yeah, that's some very cool
speaking
stuff.
of which, Scott's done a really fantastic job getting it out there. Scott, I don't know if you want to mention that, if there's any schools out there, I know you're always talk to them and, get it out there. So if there are any schools out there that want us to bring it to them, reach on out.
Yeah, we would love to. We just showed it to Vancouver Film School. on this trip, and they had a blast, and just did a speech about film marketing to Portland Community College film on this trip. Right now, I'm actually in Seattle as we speak, wrapping up a little Northwest tour. We just played Spokane, Portland, Bellingham, Washington, Vancouver, and we're doing Tacoma tonight, literally at 10 o'clock.
And that's definitely a lesson for budding filmmakers, I think, to think of how you can get the message out about your film and how you can market it. Now, what part has social media played in marketing your film?
I think our Instagram is the biggest, and because of the really cool visuals and these amazing, colorful costumes, you know, what we're finding is interesting. We get messages from all over the world. People send us fan art. They've never seen the movie before. They've just seen what we've been posting for the last 1.5 to 2 years, and they've somehow connected to the character or some other characters. People have sent us Frankie fan art, Solar Flares fan art, Captain Boulevard. So it's really interesting watching, social media. We also learn how other people watch cinema. We got a message from a young girl in, what is that country right next to Syria? Lebanon. In Lebanon. And saying, I want to see this movie. And, it's a great way to find out how other people watch cinema. And, here I know nothing about Lebanon. And, it's a great way to ask questions like, hey, how do you guys know English? Do you watch subtitles? And, no, we watch English. Most of my friends, we understand English cinema. So it's very fascinating, and it kind of brings you all closer together, which is really interesting.
Cinema is a universal language. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston Hill, and our guests today are producer Scott Weil and director John Kline of Once Upon a Superhero. So, yeah, cinema is definitely the universal language. So, social media, you say, is definitely helping. What other ways are you getting the message out about your film?
Word of mouth is just huge.
Yeah, you got to go back to the old grassroots, right?
Absolutely. Just going out there and spreading the word, putting up flyers, doing things like this podcast and getting the word out there.
Now, how can people find your film? How can people contact you or find, I guess you don't have copies that are readily available yet, correct?
No, it's something that we're working on, and we are hoping to have announcements leading up to the end of the year regarding that. Right now, people can catch us exclusively in theaters. We are wrapping up a tour of the Northwest. We have a couple of shows coming up in Southern California, Frida Cinema on May 29th, and another one in June, undated yet. And then we're going to be on the East Coast again. So we're moving all over the place. We're constantly adding shows. People can find out and look for us on our website, onceuponasuperhero.com, our Instagram page, Once Upon a Superhero, the movie, and Facebook, Twitter, also Once Upon a Superhero. And we're constantly updating that and putting up new show dates and further announcements.
Now, what's next for the crew? I mean, obviously this is, all encompassing. Are you thinking about already like next steps?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm constantly writing. I'm constantly working on stuff. It's not easy, got to find some financing and yeah, it's time to take that next step forward. But
well, go ahead. For your listeners, I think this is the most helpful. Of course, there's always things that I'm sure both of us would like to do and move forward, but without the proper funding and having done it this way once in our lives, I think was good. And it's really about focusing on getting this out. If this movie is put out the right way, it should be easier for us to secure funding for projects in the future and to have a name to do business off of that. So right now, for your listeners and thinking from a business and strategic point, it's about really following through and really just focusing on this, getting this out there the right way, and then I think other things will take care of itself.
Yeah. I was just sitting here thinking, I mean, you guys are just super amazing, pun intended. You mentioned that you started this process in 2012. I mean, here we are, a few years later. Yeah. How do you, in the film industry, how do you kind of like shorten that, time frame. Just, content is king. And there's just so many different outlets, digital platforms, Hulu, Netflix. I mean, and people are constantly, looking for, content. You mentioned the amount of, movies that are being made or not being made. But what can the industry do to change that process for you so you can be, super and fast, successful even faster, so we can see more of your great work?
Oh, thank you so much. Go ahead, Scott, you want to take that?
No, go ahead. Shoot a shot.
I think we just need to figure, we're learning the whole streaming process. Like you said, there's a lot of different ways of getting it out there. So right now we're just talking to lots of different distribution companies and trying to figure out what the best path is, but we're going to try to get it out on all of them. Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a very long process of trying to figure out the right step, because we don't want to be one of those films that after we did all this work and people got to see it, that because there's so many films, sometimes they just shelf them and it gets lost in the mix of all the thousands and thousands of films. And if it doesn't pop up in the queue, it'll never get seen. So we're trying to figure out exactly where the right place to put these, and make sure that the person that does put them out there, really gets it out there.
Well, my hope is that there's some financing folks who are listening to this episode and they go, I really got to check this out, because Once Upon a Superhero is a very special film. It's very unique. It deserves an audience. So my suggestion is for folks out there, you should seek out the saga of Solar Flare. Awesome stuff. Now, what's a final word that you'd like to leave folks that are listening?
I just think, as far as filmmaking goes, like I was saying before, you really got to remain positive, build your team well, even if it's a small team. Our team is very, very small. There's only a handful of us, and when we went shooting out in the streets, very often it would just be 2-3 people, 4 at the very most, usually around 3 though. And you just can't give up. You can't give up. Don't let people tell you, that it can't be done. Don't let people tell you how to do it. Don't let people tell you, they don't like your idea. That's all right. Other people will. And, you just really got to remain positive. There's a lot of negativity in this business and in Hollywood, and a lot of people ready to put you down and tell you how to do your work. And especially when you're making a film like this that's unlike anything else people seen before. They're expecting, a superhero film to be like all the other superhero films, and something that's completely different, and you're going out there to make something different, and then people are expecting the same. They might be a little disappointed, but then people out there that really appreciate it, really appreciate what we have done. And you just gotta stick with your guns.
Got to keep trucking. Well, we'd like to thank.
Bottom line is, if John and I had listened to everybody that told us we couldn't do A, B, and C, we wouldn't have made it past the pre-production process. Don't listen to anybody. Listen to yourself. Follow your gut. It's never wrong.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being with us. We're very glad to have you with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston Hill, your co-hosts and producers. The creative director of Tower Talk Business Radio is Rudy Breedy. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. Available as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. We'll see you next week.